Obviously we want to find a few fish, and you've got a few different ways that you can fish in Port Phillip Bay in a lot of locations. You can fish structure, or as we've got here, there's lots and lots of mud. Basically, Port Phillip Bay is like a big soup bowl, shallow on the edges, deepest in the middle. And we're out on the mud, we're in 20 meters of water, and we're sounding around. And in a lot of cases, the snapper are just like cattle. They'll be grazing around like on a paddock, because in the mud, there's scallops, there's mussels, there's crabs, but there's also lots of bait fish in this water. So we need to get the sounder sorted out properly. And I think I'm marking a couple of fish here, but as you can see, there's lots of clutter and stuff going on. I reckon that's a snapper right there. But with all this clutter, the first thing I'm gonna do, I've got my gain pretty high and I've got my color pretty high. I'm gonna bring that back down a little bit, and even just by pulling the color down, see, we're reducing some of the detail of the clutter, which is good, because we're starting to pick up this more. So that's a pretty handy thing. But then I reckon if I bring that gain back down to 5, we still want a bit of this clutter going on here, but that looks pretty good to me. We might even come back a little bit more, but see, we're starting to lose a little bit of detail. So it's just a matter of playing around with the unit. This is a stack of bait. There's probably white bait or pilchards, and that's a really, really good sign. That's a huge pile of bait right there. That's making the sounder think that this is the bottom for a second. It'll resort itself out. There we go. Oh, 100% that's fish. Look at that. That is fish right there. Oh, we're going to anchor here for sure. And you don't need to mark a lot of fish in these conditions. That is perfect. Look at that. All right, first things first, we've got to get ourselves organised. I've got the rods rigged up over there. I've got a couple of baits thawed, some pre-chopped burley. It's all pilchards, just chopped up nice and fine. We're out in 20 meters of water, and there's a bit of tide, so just a trickle, so not a big sinkers needed and all that. And we chuck the burley in, it sinks down through the water column, and then we're going to be working baits all through the water column. We want them to obviously go out, sink down, sit on the bottom for a bit, come in, do it again. You want to be active. Don't just cast your baits out and sit back for half an hour. Sort of every 5 to 10 minutes we're rotating the baits, and quite often you're catching the fish mid-water. You know, they're not all down on the bottom because snapper are quite a predator. Now I've got a range of baits here. I've got some pilchards, some silver whiting like these guys. These are a wonderful bait because that's what the fish are eating when they're out in the ocean. And then we've got some squid as well. I've got plenty of other stuff in the bag, and I've even got some King George whiting heads, which if there's a few pinkies around, it's worth putting a big hard bait out like a whiting head, and it'll sit there for a long time, but whatever eats it will generally be a big fish. So anyhow, that light's just come up over the horizon, and it's time for us to start. I need to make a quick rig, so I've got 6.0 suicide here. I'm going to tie that straight onto some 40-pound leader, like so, and then I'll show you how to do a very quick snell. Chop that, chop about a bit over 1 metre of leader, drop that hook on, the top hook on, from the underside straight down to there. Then I'm going to bring them up so they're about sort of 4 inches apart, like that. And then I'm going to come back down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 times. Then I'm going to wind back up once, and then we're going to get the end of the leader and feed it straight back up from the back side of the hook. That is a quick snell rig ready to go. Oh, that'd be a fish. Oh, there we go. And this is on the basically the sleeper rod. I'll get that one out the way. That's just a spare rod at the moment. It's not an overly big fish, but anyway. This is on the snapper snack, which is like a snapper snatcher, a paternoster rig. But what's really interesting about these is often you've got the perfect baits out the back, doing the right thing, but this is straight up and down, big flashy sort of rig. And it really gets the snapper fired up. I'll show you this rig when I get this fish in. And the best thing about this rig is it's got circle hooks on it. This has got 6.0 KLT Black Magic hooks, and the great thing is when that rod buckles over, that fish is hooked. And that's exactly how these sort of circles work, that as he comes through, he's just instantly in the corner of the mouth. He's not a big fish, but this is a good eating sized You can either use the net, or I'll try and get out through here and grab him, and I'll probably lose him, but anyhow. There we go. Look at that, and that big flashy rig, that rubber skirt just sort of wafts around there, and you'll notice there's still another bait on that bottom hook. And see, it's only a small bait because it's a piece of whiting. This was a little tiny squid head. I want the fish to come through and swallow this in one go, so I'm not fishing huge baits. And that's not a big snapper, guys, but that is what I believe one of, you know, those top 5 species in Australia that everybody wants to catch. Just a nice snapper, a bit of morning sunlight, circle hook, corner of the jaw, and we're on the board. This isn't the prettiest thing in the world, but I'm all about looking after my fish. So this is a spike, and what we're going to do is come in just behind here. And the reason I do this is 2 reasons. A, to humanely kill the fish, because, you know, we don't want him just flapping around in the bottom of the boat. And secondly, it makes far better eating because that fish relaxes. And we got a bite here. There we go. There's another fish. There we go. And I don't know if you saw that then, but this is a little bait feeder reel, and it took off. It's got a big silver whiting on it, and rather than picking the rod up and giving it a huge strike, I much prefer to just leave the rod in the holder. And the reason for that is, what's this thing doing? It's like out on the surface. The reason for that is that if that fish is bolting that way, if I pick the rod up, put it in gear and strike, and I'm going that way because it's in free spool, I find you often bounce the hooks out of the fish. But by leaving the rod in the holder, just putting it in gear, turn the handle, as he's taking off, it just pulls those hooks in. They find their mark. Hooks are so sharp these days that, you know, they're either in or they're out. And you find it gives you a better hook up rate, that's for sure, because a lot of people don't like fishing bait runner. But I'm the first to say that it's part of snapper fishing. Nothing better than hearing a bait runner howl off. There we go, there's another fish. We don't need to freak out either. We've got rods going here. Oh, he might still be there. I think he just got off. But anyway, this fish has done really not a lot, but I've had some big fish over the years that quite literally do nothing and end up being good ones. Oh yeah, he's still there. There we go. There's the net. And a lot of people go, why do those guys always catch fish? Why does that boat always catch fish? And I'm not talking about me. I'm very serious there. A big part of it comes down to being organised. Having your net, your bait, everything ready, you know, keeping calm. It really helps you put more fish in the boat because you fish more effectively. There we go. That's a male. He's actually milting just there. I'll tell you what, we might keep a couple of these because I wouldn't mind to feed a snapper, and I know Clarky, my cameraman, wouldn't mind to feed a snapper. That guy's right for a sec. We'll sort that out. All right, he's got one hook down. I'll just chop that like that. I'm going to spike this guy because it's the right thing to do. Yes, I know it's not pretty, but like I said, it's better than just leaving the fish flapping around. Right, let's catch this one if he's still there. Yeah, he's still there. And did you notice that this fish just left in the holder? It didn't do a lot. And I often believe, he's taking a bit of line. It's one of those things, it's like walking a dog. The more you sort of pull the dog, the more the dog will sort of try and pull back. If you can just lead the dog, they generally come with you. And this guy here, he got hooked and he took off, but then he sort of, there was no pressure pulling on him, so he was happy just poking around, swimming around, pulling a little bit here and there, so you don't need to freak out. This is why it pays to have that little bit of bait ready. Have your burley chopped, all that sort of stuff, because when the action happens, as we're finding this morning, it happens quick. Always when you're fighting your snapper too, be ready, because when that fish gets near the boat, it's like they see the boat or something like that, And a fish that's been coming up quite easily will often do that last dive near the boat. So once we've got a bit of colour here, it's not the time to tighten the drag. And even just by bowing the rod to the fish, see, he's just sort of doing those really aggressive lunges. By bowing the rod to the fish as he does that, he's not necessarily pulling line off the reel, he's just pulling the rod down. Get the net, a slightly better one. And you can have the world's biggest net if you want, but I find these big rubber mesh ones like this are just the absolute best. You can fit the biggest snapper ever into that. All right, let's get this guy sorted. That's my hook out gun. Anybody knows me knows that's what I use over a pair of pliers. There we go. All right, now that is a pretty nice way to start a Monday morning. That's a beautiful snapper. What I've got here is a 2-hook rig. Pretty simple, got a nice little swivel, and generally when you have a running rig you'll put the sinker above the swivel, but in this case I like to run the sinker between the swivel and the hooks, and the reason for that will sit down on the bait and it makes it much easier for casting because that weight stays down there and you get much better casting distance. Now, one of my favourite baits, and most snapper fishermen down in the southern states, their favourite bait are these silver whiting. And while these are a little bit frozen still, they're sort of at that, you know, starting to be semi-thawed sort of point. Easy way to rig them is we're going to rig him backwards. So that means the bottom hook is going to be sort of the head of the bait. So what we do, come in here about 3/4 the way down the bait, get the hook, stick it all the way through, make sure there's no scales on the tip, and then we're going to pull that hook literally all the way through the silver whiting or the pilchard. And then we're going to come in behind the gill plate or just back from the gill plate, and we're going to wriggle that hook in there. This is a 5/0 suicide. You can use a circle if you want, but I really like the suicides in a non-tidal sort of situation, because if this bait lays on the bottom, that's what he's going to cop. So as you can see, really good hook exposure there. And then with this second snelled hook in about, you know, sort of the midpoint of the bait, we're going to stick that there, and we've effectively rigged our bait backwards with lots of hook exposure. So anything that comes in, you get a good hook up rate. Then 1/2 hitch over the tail, but I come down about 10 to 20 mil from where the tail joins the body. Lock that off. Then I like to get my sinker, drop that down there, and then I do another 1/2 hitch there, and we've locked the sinker onto the bait. We're running 40-pound Black Magic Tough Trace here, and the reason for the 40-pound is the spine on these can actually be a little bit sharp when it locks up when a fish is on it. On really light leader, I have had it where it chops through and you lose your fish. So the 40-pound, it gives you, you know, a bit of resistance if the snapper's teeth get on it, but secondly, it also makes it easier to undo the 1/2 hitches, and thirdly, it stops you from getting chopped off on the bait spine. Better get this bait in the water. I'm going to hoik this one straight out the back, and then we're going to fan these baits out around the boat in a range of different baits. We've got the squid, the pillies, the whiting, and we'll see what works. There we go. Oh, far out. We've got one of the joys of fishing Port Phillip Bay is when you get wind against tide, which is what we've got here. So we've got run-in tide and sort of a northeast breeze this morning. So the lines are coming back up under the boat slowly, but that's all right. The fish are still feeding. Get that over there. Not a big fish, that's for sure. But anyway. Oh, there's another one. There's another one. And it's off in the way. This one feels like a better fish. I'll put him there. I'll deal with this guy. Yeah, this is a little one. All right. Easy way to do this. No mucking around. He's out of here. Let's sort this one. He's got a little bit more weight to him. Yeah, right. Nice. Love it when a plan comes together. It's interesting too how these fish just come through in waves. You know, we got 3 fish, then sat for 20 minutes, kept the burley going, working the rods, and then bang, 2 fish. And I did have a bite on that one as well. So that's why we fish multiple rods. And the reason we fish the rods flat too is that they sit better. You can fish more rods doing this, okay? But the other one is as well, you don't get as many tangles, but the hookup rate's better, because as you saw, when that fish ate that bait, the rod just buckles and it's pretty well straight away drag pressure. When the rod sits up in a 30-degree rod holder, the rod has to bend a long way before it sort of gets a hook set, which is different when you're trolling. But when you're sitting in a static situation like this with not a lot of tide, the flat angled rod holder is a much, much better option. He's not a big fish, so we'll let him go. Put him on the lean post, and I'll pop these hooks out. There we go. I might let this guy go. I'll pop him over this side in the sunlight. Ready. He's off.